My husband left an inheritance of $8 million, and I decided not to tell anyone. Thank God I did. On Monday, I asked my daughter-in-law to lend me $10. She replied, "Get a job, you lazy old woman." I said 3 words that left her in shock. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment from what city you're watching so I can see the reach of my story. My name is Viola, and at 64 years old, I thought I understood what loneliness meant. I was wrong. True loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by family who wish you weren't there. 6 months ago, I buried my husband, Lionel, after 42 years of marriage. The funeral was beautiful, if you can call watching your life partner disappear under the earth beautiful. But what came after? That's when I learned what true pain island. The house feels huge now. Every morning I wake up reaching for Lionel's warm body, only to find cold sheets. The silence is deafening. Gone are his terrible jokes at breakfast. Gone are the soft snores that used to keep me awake. And now I would give anything to hear them again. But the worst part isn't the grief. It's watching my own son treat me as if I were already dead. David used to call me every Sunday when Lionel was alive. We'd talk about the kids, his work, plans for the weekend. Now, 3 weeks can go by without hearing from him. When he does call, it's brief and forced, like checking something off his to-do list. "How are you holding up, Mom?" "I'm managing, honey." "Good. Good. Well, I should go. Jessica needs help with dinner." Click. That's my daughter-in-law, Jessica. 28 years old, blonde, beautiful, and she looks at me like I'm something unpleasant. She stepped in. It wasn't always like this. When David brought her home 5 years ago, she was sweet, even thoughtful. She asked me for family recipes, complimented my garden, and brought the kids to visit on weekends. That changed the day we came back from Lionel's funeral. I remember standing in my kitchen, still in my black dress, when David and Jessica arrived with their 2 children, Emma, who is 7, and little James, who had just turned 4. The kids ran to hug me, but Jessica held back, whispering something to David that made him look serious. "Mom," David said in a cautious voice, "we need to talk about your situation." Situation? As if widowhood was something I had chosen. "What do you mean?" "Well," Jessica chimed in, with that condescending tone I've come to hate, "David and I are worried about you living here all alone. This house is so big, and the expenses." I looked around my modest 2-bedroom house. Big? It could fit twice into Jessica's master bedroom. "I'm fine," I said. "Your father and I were careful with money." Jessica and David exchanged a look that I didn't understand then. Now I know exactly what it meant. "Mom," David said sweetly, "we know Dad didn't have much life insurance or a pension. We're just worried about your financial security." Jessica added, though her tone suggested she was worried about something else entirely. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, their visits became inspections. Jessica would walk through my house, commenting on things that needed fixing, suggesting I could downsize to something more manageable. She'd open my refrigerator and scrutinize the food I bought. "Viola, honey, you don't need to buy expensive organic yogurt anymore. The store brand is just as good." She'd glance at my mail, shaking her head at the utility bills. "This heating bill is outrageous. You should keep the house cooler." David would just nod, agreeing with his wife, avoiding my gaze. My son, who used to defend me from his father's occasional grumpiness, now sided with a woman who treated me like a burden. The worst part was how they behaved with the children. Emma and James would run straight to me when they visited, excited to see Grandma. But I started to notice how Jessica would pull them aside when they asked me for things. "Grandma can't buy you toys anymore, sweetie," she'd say in front of me, loud enough for me to hear. "She has to be very careful with her money now." Emma, bless her heart, would look confused, but Grandma always bought us toys. "That was when Grandpa was alive," Jessica would say, shooting me a meaningful look. "Things are different now." Different. That word started to follow me everywhere. 3 months after the funeral, I noticed my car was making a strange noise. Nothing serious, it probably just needed a tune-up. But when I mentioned it to David, hoping he knew a good mechanic, Jessica jumped in immediately. "A repair, Viola? That could cost hundreds of dollars. Maybe it's time to think about whether you really need a car. There's a good bus route that goes right to the grocery store. A bus route. At 64, after driving for almost 50 years, she wanted me to take the bus as if I were a charity case. But I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. Lionel used to say I was too polite for my own good, that I let people walk all over me because I didn't want to cause trouble. He was right. The breaking point came last Monday morning. I had been feeling unwell, just a cold, but at my age, these things hit harder. I had run out of my blood pressure medication and was getting low on my arthritis pills. The pharmacy was only a 10-minute drive, but my car was making that noise again, and I was nervous to drive it. I called David. No answer. I called again an hour later, straight to voicemail. Finally, I swallowed my pride and called Jessica directly. Hi Jessica, it's Viola. Sorry to bother you, but I was wondering if you could give me a ride to the pharmacy. My car is acting up. Oh, Viola, she sighed as if I'd asked her to donate a kidney. Today is just not a good day. I have yoga, then lunch with the girls, and then I promised Emma I'd take her school shopping. It would only take a few minutes. Look, can't you just call an Uber or something? An Uber? To pick up a $10 prescription. She wanted me to spend $20 on an Uber. I don't have the Uber app on my phone. Well, then I guess you'll have to find another solution. Maybe David can help you later. But David didn't call me back that day, or the next. By Wednesday, I was feeling worse. The cold had settled in my chest, and I was almost out of medication. I counted the cash in my wallet, $37. Not much, but enough for the prescriptions and maybe a small bottle of cough syrup. That's when I made the mistake that would change everything. I called Jessica again. Jessica, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but could you lend me $10? Just until David gets paid on Friday, I need to pick up my prescriptions, and I'm a little short. The silence on the other end was deafening. Are you asking me for money? Just $10. I'll pay you back. Viola, her voice turned icy. I think it's time you accepted reality. You're a grown woman. If you need money, get a job. Stop calling here every time you have a problem. My heart started to pound. Jessica, what are you? No, I'm serious. This whole helpless widow act is getting old. You want money? Go work for it. McDonald's is always hiring. Maybe you should try being useful for once, instead of sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. Her words hit me like physical blows. Playing the helpless widow, feeling sorry for yourself. Get a job, you lazy old woman, she continued, her voice rising. Stop expecting everyone to take care of you. I stood there in my kitchen, phone in hand, feeling something crack in my chest. This wasn't just about $10. It was about respect. It was about family. It was about the woman my son married, thinking I was nothing more than a burden to be tolerated. You're going to regret this, I said quietly. Excuse me? My voice was calm and firm, though my hands were shaking. You are going to regret this. Are you threatening me? No, Jessica. I'm not threatening you. I'm simply telling you that you are going to regret treating me this way. I hung up before she could respond. For a long moment, I just stood there in the silent kitchen, listening to my own heartbeat. Then I went to my bedroom, to the closet where Lionel's clothes still hung, and I reached behind his old suits to touch the small safe he had installed years ago. Inside that safe were documents that would change everything. Documents that proved Jessica had just made the biggest mistake of her life. But not yet. Not today. Today I would let her believe she had won. After hanging up on Jessica, I sat in Lionel's old recliner and let the memories wash over me. 42 years of marriage, and I was still discovering things about the man I thought I knew inside and out. 3 weeks before he died, Lionel finally told me everything. He was in the hospital for his last round of chemo. The treatments we both knew weren't working anymore. The doctors had started using words like palliative care and getting your affairs in order. We both understood what that meant, even if we couldn't say it out loud. I was sitting by his bed, reading him the sports section like I did every morning, when he suddenly grabbed my hand. Viola, honey, we need to talk about something important. I put down the paper and looked at him. Even sick, even thin and pale from the chemo, Lionel's eyes were still sharp, still intelligent. What is it, sweetheart? There are things you don't know about our finances. Things I never told you. Why? Well, I wanted it to be a surprise for you if something ever happened to me. My heart lurched. Lionel, what are you talking about? He squeezed my hand harder. Promise me you won't tell anyone what I'm about to say. Not David, not Jessica, not anyone. Not until you're absolutely sure you can trust them. You're scaring me. Promise me, Viola. I promise. He took a ragged breath. I've been investing our money for 40 years. Nothing risky, nothing crazy. But I've been very, very careful. And I've been very, very lucky. I frowned. I knew we had some savings, maybe $20,000 or $30,000. We lived modestly, drove used cars, and shopped for deals. What kind of investing? Mostly index funds. Some blue-chip stocks. I started with just $50 a month back in 1982. Every single month. $50. Then when I got a promotion, I raised it to $100, then $200. You never noticed because I had it set up to come out before our paychecks ever hit the checking account. I was beginning to understand. How much, Lionel? He was quiet for so long I thought he'd drifted off to sleep. Then, barely a whisper, $8 million. The room spun. What? $8.2 million as of last month. It's all in your name now, has been for years. The life insurance? That's just a small piece. This is our real legacy. I couldn't breathe. $8 million. My mind couldn't even process the number. But Lionel, why didn't you tell me? All these years, we were so careful with money, worrying about bills, because I wanted us to live normally. I wanted us to appreciate what we had, not get obsessed with having more. And, he paused, choosing his words carefully, because I've seen what money does to families. I've seen how it changes people. David would never. David might not. But what about Jessica? And what about the people we don't even know? And David's kids when they grow up? Money brings out the worst in people, Viola. It makes them feel entitled to things they haven't earned. I thought about that conversation now, sitting in Lionel's chair. He had been so wise, so careful. He'd made me promise to wait, to watch, to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing. Test them, he'd told me on his last day at home. See who loves Viola, the woman, and who just loves what they think you can give them. The test was over. Jessica had failed spectacularly. Over the next few days, I observed David and Jessica's behavior with new eyes. They came over on Saturday, supposedly to check on me, but really to continue their campaign of making me feel helpless. Jessica went straight to my thermostat. Viola, it's 72 degrees in here. It's way too warm. You're wasting money on heat. She turned it down to 68 without asking. David rummaged through my refrigerator. Mom, you're letting food go bad. You're buying too much for one person. I know how much food I need. But look at this yogurt. It expires next week. I'll use it before then. Jessica sighed dramatically. This is exactly what we're talking about, Viola. You're not thinking clearly about these things anymore. Not thinking clearly. At 64. Because I bought groceries for the week. Perhaps, Jessica continued, it would be better if we helped you with the shopping. Made you a list of what you actually need. A list? As if I were a child who couldn't be trusted to buy my own food. How thoughtful, I said carefully. But I've been doing my own grocery shopping for almost 50 years. That was when you had Lionel to help you spend it all, David said. Now it's just you. Those words stung more than they should have. As they got ready to leave, Jessica delivered the final blow. Oh, Viola, I was thinking about what you said on the phone the other day, about needing money. My stomach clenched. Yes? Well, David and I talked it over, and we think maybe you could use a purpose, some structure in your life. What are you talking about? David stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Mom, there's a senior center downtown that has a job placement program. Nothing too demanding, just part-time work to help you. Supplement your income. Supplement my income. I almost laughed. What kind of work? I asked. Jessica's smile was sickeningly sweet. Oh, you know, cleaning services, meal prep, companion care for other seniors. Things that would suit your skill set. Other seniors. I was 64, not 90. You want me to clean houses? It's honest work, Viola. Jessica's tone implied that what I'd been doing with my life for the past 42 years was not, and it would help you feel more independent, more secure. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had sacrificed for, the person I had loved unconditionally his entire life. David, you think I should clean houses? He couldn't meet my eyes. I think Jessica has a point about having a purpose. A purpose. As if raising him, supporting his father, running a household, volunteering at church, caring for my elderly mother until she passed, as if none of that had been enough. I'll think about it, I said. After they left, I sat in Lionel's chair again and pulled out the binder he had given me before he died. Bank statements, investment portfolios, detailed records of 40 years of careful, patient wealth accumulation. The most recent statement showed a balance of $8,247,032. $8 million that my son's wife thought I should earn by cleaning toilets. I thought of Lionel's words again. See who loves Viola, the woman, and who just loves what they think you can give them. The answer was becoming crystal clear. That night, I made 2 calls. The first was to the financial advisor Lionel had worked with for decades, a man named Arthur Vance, who had helped turn our modest investments into this fortune. Mrs. Morrison. Arthur's voice was warm and familiar. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, Arthur. I think it's time we talked about making some changes. Of course. What did you have in mind? I want to move. Quietly. And I want to start looking at properties. Properties? Are you thinking of downsizing? I smiled, thinking of Jessica's constant suggestions about my too big house. Actually, I was thinking of an upgrade. The second call was to my sister, Margaret, who lived in Phoenix. Margaret was the only other person who knew about Lionel's investments, the one family member he had trusted completely. Viola, how are you, honey? I'm ready, Maggie. Ready for what? Ready to see what kind of people my son and his wife really are. Margaret was quiet for a moment. So Lionel's gut feeling was right. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be proud of me. I'm about to take my life back. When I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Excitement. For too long, I had let others define who I was, what I was worth, what I was capable of. But I wasn't the helpless widow they thought I was. I was a woman with $8 million and nothing left to lose. 2 weeks after the suggestion that I clean houses, Jessica decided to take her campaign to the next level. She called it a family meeting, but it was really an intervention designed to prove I was losing my mind. It started on a Thursday morning when David called, his voice unusually formal. Mom, Jessica and I would like you to come for dinner on Sunday. We need to discuss some important family matters. What kind of matters? Just some things we're concerned about. Your well-being, your future. We want to make sure you're taken care of. The way he said well-being made my skin crawl, like I was a problem that needed solving. Sunday arrived, gray and drizzly, a perfect match for my mood. I drove my supposedly unreliable car. The noise had mysteriously vanished after a mechanic replaced a simple belt for $68. Less than what Jessica probably spent on her weekly manicure to David and Jessica's immaculate suburban house. When I rang the bell, Jessica opened the door wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and dark jeans that likely cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was bright and artificial, like the flowers in her perfectly manicured entryway. Viola, come in, come in. Let me take your coat. She hung my old wool coat next to their designer jackets, and I couldn't help but notice the contrast. Everything in Jessica's world was new, expensive, perfect. Even her children's toys were organized in matching bins, nothing out of place. David came out of the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel. Hi, Mom. How was the drive? Fine. The car is running perfectly now. Good, good. But he didn't ask what was wrong with it, or how much it cost to fix. The David I raised would have asked. We sat in their living room, and I instantly felt like I was in the hot seat. David and Jessica sat on the sofa opposite me, a united front. The kids were nowhere to be seen. Where are Emma and James? I asked. They're at Jessica's mother's house, David said. We thought this conversation should just be for the adults. Adults. As if I didn't qualify. Jessica leaned forward, her expression serious but concerned, like a social worker about to deliver bad news. Viola, we've been thinking a lot about our conversation the other day, about your financial situation. What about it? Well, she continued, we're worried you aren't thinking about money with the same clarity you used to. It's perfectly normal for people your age. People my age? David jumped in, trying to soften his wife's words. Mom, what Jessica means is that managing finances can be overwhelming when you're dealing with grief and living alone for the first time. I've been managing our finances just fine for 42 years. But that was with Dad's help, Jessica said, her tone patient, as if explaining something to a child. Now it's all on you, and we've noticed some worrying patterns. Patterns? I felt my jaw tighten. What patterns? Jessica pulled out a small notebook. Apparently, she'd been taking notes on my life. Well, for instance, last week when you called asking for money for prescriptions. A responsible person would have budgeted for medical expenses. I had the money. I just didn't want to drive my car while it was making a noise, but instead of solving the car problem, you asked us for money. That shows poor problem-solving skills. Poor problem-solving skills. I was 64, not 14. And then there's your grocery shopping, she went on, flipping through her notes. David noticed you're buying too much food and letting it go bad. It suggests you're no longer processing quantities correctly. I bought 1 extra container of yogurt. It's not just the yogurt, Mom, David said, and hearing him agree was a knife to the chest. It's a pattern of miscalculation. Miscalculation about my own grocery needs. Jessica was just getting started. We're also concerned about your decisions at home. You keep the heat too high. You leave lights on, you're making choices that suggest you're not fully considering the financial implications. I keep my house at 72 degrees, because I'm comfortable at 72 degrees. But Viola, that's wasteful. When you're on a fixed income, every dollar counts. A fixed income. She said it like I was on welfare. We think, David said, looking to his wife for support, that it might be helpful for you to have some assistance with these decisions. Just until you're back on your feet. What kind of assistance? Jessica's smile was particularly radiant. Well, I've been doing some research, and there are some wonderful services for seniors who need help with financial planning and daily decision-making. Seniors who need help. I was starting to see where this was going. You mean a caregiver? Not a caregiver exactly, she said quickly. More like a life management service. Someone who could help you create budgets, make grocery lists, and even organize your bills so you don't fall behind. I have never been late on a payment in my life. Not yet, she said sweetly. But grief affects people in different ways, and sometimes the effects don't show up right away. David nodded seriously. We just want to make sure you're protected, Mom, that you don't make any serious mistakes while you're adjusting to life without Dad. Serious mistakes. Like buying an extra yogurt. What kind of mistakes are you worried about? Jessica exchanged a look with David and then pulled out another sheet of paper. Well, for one, we're worried about you living in that house alone. It's a lot of space for one person, and the upkeep costs, my house is paid off. Yes, but there are still property taxes, utilities, and maintenance. We calculated that you could save at least $800 a month by moving into a nice senior community. A senior community. At 64. These places are wonderful, she went on enthusiastically. They handle all the maintenance. They offer meals. They offer activities. You'd have so much less to worry about. I like worrying about my own life. David leaned forward. Mom, we're just trying to help. We see you're struggling. I'm not struggling. I asked you for $10. $10, David. I asked for $10 one time. Jessica's voice took on that condescending tone again. Viola, it's not about the amount. It's about the pattern. First, it's $10 for prescriptions. Then it could be help with a utility bill. Then maybe you fall behind on your property taxes. I am not falling behind on anything. Not yet, she said. But we want to prevent that from happening. I looked at both of them, realizing what was truly happening. This wasn't concern. It was a takeover. They were trying to convince me, and possibly themselves, of my incompetence so they could step in and manage my life. You've already looked at these senior living places, haven't you? I asked. Jessica brightened. As a matter of fact, yes. There's a lovely place called Maple Creek, about 20 minutes from here. We took a tour last week. You toured a nursing home for me without asking me? It's not a nursing home, David said quickly. It's independent, living with supportive services. We just wanted to have options ready, Jessica added. We've scheduled an appointment for you to visit next week, just to see what you think. They had scheduled an appointment for me, without asking. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling with rage. Let me get this straight. You think I'm incompetent to manage my own money, my own house, my own groceries? You want me to move into a home for old people and have strangers help me make decisions about my life? Mom, that's not. And you've already started making arrangements without consulting me. Jessica's mask slipped a little. Viola, you're being dramatic. We're trying to help you. Help me with what, exactly? With accepting reality, she said, her voice sharp. You are an elderly widow with limited resources. These are the kinds of decisions elderly widows have to make. An elderly widow with limited resources. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised to be kind and considerate and independent. David, you agree with your wife? He couldn't meet my eyes. I think we all just want what's best for you, and you think what's best for me is to give up my independence? I think what's best for you is to be realistic about your situation. My situation. As if being widowed had automatically made me incapable of reason. I grabbed my purse and walked to the door. Where are you going? Jessica demanded. I turned to look at them, sitting on their expensive sofa in their perfect house, so certain they knew what was best for me. I'm going home, I said. To my house that is too big for me, where I will set the thermostat to whatever I please and buy all the yogurt I want. Viola, you are overreacting. No, Jessica. I am reacting entirely appropriately to being treated like I'm senile. As I reached for the doorknob, I heard her say something that chilled my blood. This is exactly what we're talking about, David. She can't even have a rational conversation about her own future. Maybe we need to consider other options. Other options. I walked to my car in the drizzle, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. Other options. What did that mean? A legal conservatorship? Having me declared incompetent? For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a genuine flicker of fear. But as I drove home, the fear morphed into something else entirely. A cold, calculated fury. They thought I was a helpless old woman with no options. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The dinner invitation came exactly 1 week after their intervention. David's voice on the phone was carefully neutral, but I could hear Jessica coaching him in the background. Mom, we'd love to have you over for dinner on Friday night. The kids have been asking about you. That was a lie. If Emma and James had been asking about me, they would have called. They always did. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just a family dinner. Jessica is making pot roast. My pot roast recipe, the one I taught her when she first married David and pretended to care about family traditions. I almost said no. My gut told me it was another ambush, but I needed to see just how far they were willing to take this charade, and I missed my grandkids terribly. What time? 6:30. And Mom? Maybe dress up a little. We're having a few other people over. Other people. My stomach clenched. Who? Oh, just some friends. People who care about you. I hung up knowing this was going to be worse than I thought. On Friday night, I chose my outfit carefully. A navy blue dress Lionel had always loved, pearl earrings that had been my mother's, and my wedding ring. I wanted to look like the competent, dignified woman I was, not the frail creature they were trying to paint me as. David and Jessica's house was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Through the windows, I could see more people than usual moving inside. My heart quickened. Jessica opened the door in a black cocktail dress that was far too formal for a family dinner. Her smile was bright and cold. Viola, you look lovely. Come in, come in. The living room was filled with people I barely recognized. A middle-aged woman in a business suit stood by the fireplace. A kind-looking, gray-haired man sat on the sofa, a leather portfolio on his lap. David hovered near the kitchen, looking haunted. And in a corner, barely visible, were Emma and James, staring at their tablets, clearly under orders to be quiet while the adults handled important business. Viola, Jessica's voice had a professional cheerfulness that set my teeth on edge. I'd like to introduce you to some people who are here to help us tonight. Help us. Not help me. Help us. The woman in the suit stepped forward with an aggressive smile. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Brenda Davies from Senior Life Solutions. David and Jessica have told me so much about you. Senior Life Solutions. I'd never heard of them, but the name alone made me want to run. The man with the portfolio stood up. And I'm Dr. Mark Peterson. I'm a geriatric psychiatrist who specializes in helping families navigate difficult transitions. A psychiatrist. They had brought a psychiatrist to dinner. I looked around the room, the cold dawn of understanding breaking over me. This wasn't a dinner, it was an intervention. A formal, orchestrated attempt to convince me of my own mental incompetence. Please, sit down. Brenda gestured to a single chair that had been placed opposite everyone else, like an accused person's chair. I remained standing. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was invited for dinner with my family. Well, we'll eat later, Jessica said brightly. But first, we thought it would be good to have a conversation about your future, with some professional guidance. Dr. Peterson opened his portfolio. Mrs. Morrison, your son and daughter-in-law have expressed some concerns about your ability to live independently. They're worried about your safety and your decision-making abilities. My decision-making abilities, Brenda chimed in smoothly. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Many people your age experience some cognitive decline after the loss of a spouse. It's perfectly normal. Normal. There was that word again. What exactly do you think is wrong with my cognition? Dr. Peterson consulted his notes. Well, I understand you've had difficulty managing your finances. You've been making poor decisions about household expenses, and you've shown signs of confusion with basic daily tasks. I looked at David, who was studying his shoes as if they held the secrets of the universe. David, is that what you told them? He finally looked up, his face flushed. Mom, we're just worried. Answer the question. Is that what you told them? Jessica jumped in before he could answer. Viola, please sit down. You're getting agitated, and that's precisely what concerns us. I'm not agitated. I'm angry. There's a difference. Brenda made a note on her clipboard. I actually watched her write that my anger was a symptom to be documented. Mrs. Morrison. Dr. Peterson's voice was kind, professional, and condescending. I'd like to ask you a few simple questions, just to get a baseline assessment of your current mental state. My current mental state is that I am furious that I have been ambushed in my son's living room by strangers who think I am senile. Could you tell me what year it is? I stared at him. Are you serious? Just humor me. What year is it? It's 2024. The president is Joe Biden. We're in Westchester County, New York, and I do not have dementia. Jessica made a small noise of frustration. You see? This is what we mean. She gets defensive over simple questions. I get defensive when I'm treated like an incompetent. Dr. Peterson tried again. Mrs. Morrison, can you tell me how much money you have in your checking account? We were getting to it. Why? Because your family is concerned that you don't have a clear grasp of your financial situation. I looked around at the vultures circling what they believed was a helpless old woman. Brenda, taking notes. Dr. Peterson, observing me like a specimen under a microscope. Jessica, vibrating with anticipation. And David, my son, my baby boy, the child I had loved and protected and sacrificed for, was letting it happen. My financial situation is none of your business, I said quietly. But it is our business, Jessica shot back. Because when you can no longer take care of yourself, it becomes David's responsibility, our responsibility. Viola, you called me asking for $10. You can't get your car fixed. You're struggling to buy groceries. These are all signs that you need help. Brenda nodded understandingly. Senior Life Solutions specializes in helping families transition their loved ones into appropriate care settings. We've found a lovely community that would be just perfect for you. The same nursing home you visited without my permission. It's not a nursing home, David said desperately. It's assisted living. You'd have your own apartment, but with supportive services. Supportive services like someone else controlling my money. Dr. Peterson leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, do you understand why your family is concerned about you living alone? Because they think I'm incompetent. And do you think their concerns might be valid? I stared at him for a long moment. This man, who didn't know me, who knew nothing about my life except what David and Jessica had told him, was asking me to agree to my own mental incompetence. No, I said simply. I don't. Brenda sighed. Mrs. Morrison, denial is very common in these situations. But the fact that you can't see the problems your family is describing could, in itself, be a symptom of cognitive decline. A catch-22. If I agreed I was incompetent, I was. If I disagreed, it was proof of my incompetence. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Jessica's eyes lit up. Well, we've been looking into the legal options. Legal options? Mom, David finally spoke. In New York, if someone is unable to care for themselves, their family can petition for conservatorship. The room went silent. Even Emma looked up from her tablet. Conservatorship. They were talking about having me declared legally incompetent. You want to take away my legal rights? We want to protect you, Jessica said, but her eyes were cold as ice, from making decisions that could harm you. I stood up slowly, clutching my purse. I think I understand now. Mom, please? No, David. I understand perfectly. I looked at each person in the room. You have decided that I am incompetent. You have found professionals to back up your decision. You have researched the legal process to take away my rights. You have chosen where you want me to live. We're trying to help you, Brenda said. You're trying to control me. There's a difference. I walked toward the door, but Jessica's voice stopped me. Viola, if you walk out of here tonight, we will have no choice but to move forward with the conservatorship petition, for your own safety. I turned to face her. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. If you don't see reason, if you don't accept help, we will have to turn to the courts. I looked at my son one last time. David, you agree with this? He was crying, but he nodded. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't watch you destroy yourself, destroy myself, by living in my own house and buying my own groceries. I walked over to where Emma and James were sitting. My granddaughter looked up at me, her eyes confused and scared. Bye, Grandma, she whispered. Goodbye, sweetheart. As I headed for the door, I heard Dr. Peterson say to David, You're doing the right thing. Sometimes families have to make tough choices. Tough choices. I drove home through my tears, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got to my house, my paid-for house that was supposedly too big for me, I sat in the car for a long time, just looking at the front door. They wanted to take away my legal rights. They wanted to put me in a home. They wanted to control my money, my decisions, my life, all because they believed I was a helpless widow with no resources and no options. I got out of the car and walked to my front door, the keys feeling firm in my hand for the first time in weeks. It was time they understood just how wrong they were. Once inside, I went straight to the bedroom and opened Lionel's safe. The bank statements and investment portfolios seemed to glow in the lamplight. $8,247,000. I pulled out my phone and called Arthur Vance. Arthur, it's Viola Morrison. I need you to do something for me first thing Monday morning. Of course, Mrs. Morrison. How can I help? I want to buy a house. Something that makes a statement. What kind of statement? I smiled for the first time in weeks. The kind that shows them they picked the wrong woman to mess with. On Monday morning, at 8:30 sharp, I was sitting in Arthur Vance's office, watching him scroll through luxury property listings on his computer screen. The sun streamed through the floor to ceiling windows of his downtown office, illuminating the documents spread across his mahogany desk, documents that would change everything. Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, Arthur said, looking up from the screen with concern in his eyes. Are you sure about this? Buying $1 million house is a major decision, especially so soon after your husband's passing. I squared my shoulders. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's see what's available. The first property he showed me was a beautiful colonial in Scarsdale, one of the most prestigious neighborhoods in the county. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, and a backyard that looked like it was out of a magazine. "This one just hit the market," he said. "It's in excellent condition. Great schools nearby." "Perfect," I interrupted. "I'll take it." Arthur blinked. "Don't you want to see it first?" "I trust your judgment." "If you say it's perfect, it's perfect. Mrs. Morrison, we're talking about a cash purchase, $1.2 million. I understand, and I want to close as soon as possible. This week, if you can manage it." He shook his head in amazement, but started making calls. By noon, I had purchased a house 3 times the size of my old one, in a neighborhood where David and Jessica could never afford to live. But the house was just the beginning. For the next 3 days, I became a woman on a mission. I hired the best moving company in the area to pack up my old house with care and professionalism. I bought a new Mercedes sedan, nothing flashy, just something reliable and elegant that would never make mysterious noises. I opened accounts at the most exclusive shops in the area, the kinds of places where they remember your name and bring you champagne while you shop. Most importantly, I hired Caroline Hayes, the best estate planning attorney in the state. "Mrs. Morrison," Caroline said during our consultation, "your family's attempt to file for conservatorship is, at best, legally questionable. You are clearly competent, managing your affairs well, and have done nothing to suggest you need a conservator. But they will still try. People try all sorts of things when they think there's money on the line. The key is to make them understand that their assumptions are completely, utterly wrong." On Friday morning, I was putting the finishing touches on my new house when the doorbell rang. Through the beveled glass door, I could see David's BMW in my circular driveway. I opened the door wearing a cream silk blouse and tailored slacks, looking every bit the successful woman I had always been, but had never been allowed to show. David stood on my doorstep, his mouth agape, staring at the marble foyer behind me, the crystal chandelier overhead, and the sweeping staircase that curved up to the second floor. "Mom." His voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, David. Come on in." He entered as if walking into a museum, his eyes wide as he took in the elegant furniture, the original art on the walls, the fresh flowers in expensive vases. "I don't understand." "How about some coffee? I have a wonderful Ethiopian blend." He followed me into the kitchen, a masterpiece of marble countertops and high-end appliances, with a breakfast nook overlooking the pristine backyard. I poured coffee into porcelain cups and motioned for him to sit at the granite island. "Mom, you need to explain this. How did you afford this house?" I took a sip of my coffee. "Your father was a very wise man, David." "What do you mean?" "He invested our money for 40 years. Every spare dollar he invested. Very carefully, very conservatively, very successfully." David went pale. "How much money are we talking about?" "Enough. Mom, I need a number." I put my cup down and looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 32, handsome like his father, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before, a calculating look that uncomfortably reminded me of his wife. "Why do you need a number, David?" Because we." He struggled for words. "Because we were worried you didn't have enough to live on." "Were you?" "Yes. That's why we wanted you to move to assisted living. That's why we thought you needed help with your finances. We thought Dad didn't leave you much. Your father left me everything I could ever possibly need." David ran his hands through his hair as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "But you asked Jessica for $10. You said your car was making noise. You seemed like you were struggling. I asked Jessica for $10 to see what kind of person she really was. And I found out exactly what I needed to know." He went completely white. "What do you mean?" "I mean your wife proved to me that she has no respect, no kindness, and not an ounce of human decency. When someone asks you for $10, David, you give them $10. You don't humiliate them. You don't call them lazy. You don't tell them to get a job. She was just frustrated. She was cruel. And you let her be cruel." David stared into his coffee cup. "Mom, if you had this money all along, why didn't you tell us?" "Because your father warned me not to. He said money changes people, brings out the worst in them. He wanted me to see who would love me for me and who would only love what they thought I could give them, and I found out." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, a gardener was trimming the hedges, the sound of his shears a steady rhythm against the tension in the room. "How much, Mom?" David's voice had gone quiet. "How much did Dad leave you?" I studied his face, searching for any trace of the boy who used to crawl into my lap during nightmares, who made me Mother's Day cards by hand, who told me I was the best mom in the world. Enough that I will never need anything from anyone ever again. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw Jessica's name on the screen. "She's wondering where you are, isn't she? How did you know?" "Because I know exactly what this is about, David. You came here to see if I really have money so you can report back to your wife." "That's not true." He couldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. "Your father left me $8 million, I said quietly. David's coffee cup hit the marble countertop with a sharp crack. Coffee splashed everywhere, but he didn't seem to notice. $8 million? 8.2 million, actually, as of last month. Oh my God, Mom, $8 million. Language, David. He shot up from his stool, pacing to the window that overlooked my new backyard. $8 million. And you let us believe you were broke. I let you show me who you really were. We were trying to help you. You were trying to control me. There's a difference." He spun around, his face red with anger. "Do you have any idea what we've been through? The stress, the worry, the time we've spent trying to figure out how to take care of you? Take care of me? Or take care of my assets? That's not fair, isn't it? You brought a psychiatrist to your house, David. You talked about a conservatorship. You wanted to take away my legal rights. Because we thought you needed protection. From what? From living in my own home? From buying my own groceries? From keeping my thermostat at a comfortable temperature?" He had no answer for that. "I need to call Jessica," he said finally. "Of course you do." He stepped outside to make the call, but I could see him through the kitchen window, gesturing wildly as he spoke. When he came back inside, his expression was completely different. Cold, calculating. "Mom, we need to discuss this logically, okay? $8 million is a lot of money, more than you could ever spend, and you're not getting any younger." There he was. The real David, the one his wife had so carefully cultivated. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to think about family, about Emma and James's college funds, about setting up trusts, making sure the money is protected. Protected from what? From mistakes. From people who might try to take advantage of you." I almost laughed. "People like who, David?" "I don't know. Scammers, financial advisors who might not have your best interests at heart. But you and Jessica would. Of course we would. We're family." Family. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Now let me ask you something, David. If I hadn't told you about the money, what would have happened next week?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You were pursuing a conservatorship. What was the next step?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "We had a court date on Tuesday, and if the judge had granted the conservatorship, we would have made sure you were safe and taken care of." "In the assisted living facility you chose for me?" "Yes." "And who would have controlled my finances?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "We would have," he said finally. "All of my finances, including the money you didn't even know existed." He realized where I was going. "Mom, that's not why." "Yes, it is, David. That's exactly why. You thought I was a helpless widow with limited resources, so you decided to take control of those limited resources. Now you find out the resources aren't so limited, and suddenly you want to protect them. You're twisting this. Am I?" My phone rang. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," David said. "She wants to talk to you." I declined the call. It immediately rang again. "Mom, talk to her." "Why?" "Because she's my wife. Because she's the mother of your grandchildren. Because we're family," I answered on the third ring. "Viola." Jessica's voice was completely different from how she had ever spoken to me before. Sweet, almost pleading. "Viola, darling. David told me about your inheritance. What wonderful news. Is it?" "Of course it is. We're so happy for you. And we are so sorry if we misinterpreted your situation." "Misinterpreted? We thought you were struggling financially. We were only trying to help. By calling me a lazy old woman?" Silence. Viola, I was having a bad day. I said things I didn't mean. But we're family, and family forgives, right? Family forgives. But family also doesn't try to steal each other's legal rights. Jessica, what did you think would happen if the conservatorship was approved? What do you mean? I mean, who did you think would control my money? We would have made sure you had everything you needed. All 8 million of it. Another silence. Viola, can we come over? Can we talk about this in person? I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I looked at David, who was watching me with desperation in his eyes. No, I said simply. I don't think we need to talk. But Viola, we're family. No, Jessica, we're not. I hung up and turned off my phone. David looked at me as if I'd slapped him. Mom, you can't just cut us off like that. Watch me. What about Emma and James? What about your grandchildren? That hit me, but I kept my expression firm. What about them? Are you going to punish them for our mistakes? I'm not punishing anyone, David. I'm simply choosing not to be around people who treat me badly. We can change. Jessica can apologize properly. We can fix this. I looked at my son, this man I had raised and loved and sacrificed for, and I felt something inside me finally let go. No, David, you can't fix this. Because this isn't about money or misunderstandings. It's about respect. And once you show someone you don't respect them, you can't take it back. So that's it? You're just cutting us out of your life? I'm going to live my life. For the first time in decades, I'm going to live it exactly the way I want to. He walked to the door, then turned one last time. This isn't over, Mom. Yes, David, it island. After he left, I sat in my beautiful new kitchen, surrounded by a luxury I had never allowed myself to enjoy. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. For the first time since Lionel died, I was exactly where I needed to be. 6 months later, I was sitting in my glass-enclosed sunroom, reading the morning paper, when I heard the familiar sound of children's laughter from the backyard next door. My new neighbors, the Hendersons, had 3 grandchildren who visited every weekend, and their joy was a constant reminder of what family should sound like. Margaret had flown in from Phoenix for a visit and was curled up in the chair opposite me, sipping coffee from one of my fine china cups. You look happy, Viola, she said, studying my face. Truly happy. I am happy. Any regrets? I thought about that question. Did I regret buying this house? No. Did I regret revealing the truth about my finances? No. Did I regret cutting ties with David and Jessica? That was more complicated. I miss Emma and James, I said. I really, really miss them. Have you heard from them? Emma called me 3 weeks ago. She somehow got my new number. Margaret raised an eyebrow. What did she say? She asked why I moved without telling her. She said she missed me. And what did you tell her? I told her that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements and that I needed some space to figure things out. But I also told her that I love her very much and that will never change. Smart girl. And what about David and Jessica? I put down my coffee cup and sighed. They tried everything. First came the guilt trips, phone calls about how I was abandoning my family, how Emma was crying for her grandmother, how they couldn't understand why I was being so cruel. Cruel? According to Jessica, walking away from your family over money is the most selfish thing a person can do. Margaret snorted. That's rich, coming from someone who tried to steal your legal rights. Then came the bribes. Suddenly, they wanted to take me on vacation, treat me to dinner every week, include me in all their family activities. Jessica even offered to cook my favorite meals and bring them over. Too little, too late? Exactly. Then came the lawyers. Margaret nearly choked on her coffee. Lawyers? They tried to challenge my competency again, claiming I was making irrational financial decisions. They pointed to the purchase of this house as evidence of a diminished mental capacity. How did that go? I smiled, remembering the look on their lawyer's face when Caroline Hayes presented my case. The judge found that I was completely competent, making sound decisions and managing my affairs perfectly. He dismissed their petition and warned them about harassment. Good for you. The final straw was when they showed up here unannounced last month, with Emma and James. Margaret leaned forward. They used the children. They brought those babies to my doorstep and told them to ask Grandma why she didn't love them anymore. The memory still made my chest ache with anger and hurt. What did you do? I invited Emma and James inside, gave them cookies and milk, and explained that I loved them very much, but that their parents and I had some problems to work out. Then I went outside and told David and Jessica that if they ever used those children as weapons against me again, I would call the police. David looked ashamed, but Jessica, I shook my head. Jessica looked at this house, looked at my car in the driveway, looked at my clothes, and I could just see her calculating how much money she was losing by not having access to me. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Do you think David understands what he's lost? I think David is starting to understand that his wife is not who he thought she was, but I also think he's too far in to admit it. My phone rang, interrupting our conversation. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Morrison? This is Janet Martinez from Cherry Hills Elementary. I'm Emma's teacher. My heart skipped a beat. Is Emma all right? She's fine, but I'm calling at her request. She wanted me to give you a message. What kind of message? She asked me to tell you that she's been writing you letters, but her mother won't let her send them. She wanted you to know that she loves you and misses you, and she hopes you're happy in your new house. I felt my eyes well up with tears. She really said that? She did. She also asked me to tell you that she's been saving her allowance because she wants to buy you a present, but she doesn't know your address. I had to clear my throat before I could speak. Could you give her my address discreetly? I think that would be just fine. She's a very mature little girl, Mrs. Morrison. She understands more than her parents think. After I hung up, Margaret handed me a tissue. That little girl loves you. I know. And I love her. Both of them. So what are you going to do? I wrestled with that question for the rest of the day. What was I going to do? I couldn't have a relationship with my grandchildren without dealing with their parents. But I also couldn't pretend that what David and Jessica had done was acceptable. 3 days later, I got my answer. A letter from Emma arrived in my mailbox, written in her second-grade scrawl on purple construction paper. Dear Grandma Viola, I hope you like your new house. I bet it's beautiful. Mommy says you don't want to see us anymore, but I don't think that's true. I think grown-ups get confused sometimes. I love you very much. Can I come visit someday? Love, Emma. P.S. James says hi, and he misses your chocolate chip cookies. I stood in my kitchen with that letter in my hand, and I knew what I had to do. I called Caroline Hayes. Caroline, I want to set up a trust for my grandchildren, full college tuition, money for graduate school if they want it, maybe something for their first homes when they're adults. That's a lovely gesture, Mrs. Morrison. How much are you thinking? $1 million for each of them. That's very generous. Do you want the parents to have any control over these funds? Absolutely not. The money goes directly to Emma and James when they turn 25. Not to their parents, not for them to manage. Direct access only. I can set that up easily. And Caroline, I want to do one more thing. What's that? I want to send a letter to David and Jessica explaining exactly what they lost when they decided to treat me like I was incompetent. 2 weeks later, I hand-delivered a letter to David and Jessica's house. I didn't go inside or speak to them. I simply left it in their mailbox and drove away. The letter was simple. David and Jessica, I have established trust funds for Emma and James that will fund their college educations and provide them with financial security as adults. These funds are independently managed, and no one but Emma and James will have access to them when they turn 25. I hope you understand that these trusts represent what you could have shared in as a family, had you chosen to treat me with respect and kindness instead of cruelty and manipulation. I will always love my grandchildren, and they will always be welcome in my life when they are old enough to make their own decisions about their relationships. As for the two of you, I hope you find happiness, but I also hope you learn that family is not about what you can take from people. It's about what you give. Viola. Margaret was still visiting when David called that evening. Mom. His voice was different, subdued. I got your letter. Good. $2 million for the kids' education. They're good kids. They deserve a good future, and nothing for us. What did you think you deserved, David? He was quiet for a long time. I think I understand now what we did to you. Do you? We treated you like you were incompetent. We tried to take control of your life. We were wrong. Yes, you were. Is there any way? Is there any chance you can forgive us? I looked out the window at the beautiful garden I had created, the life I had built for myself, the peace I had found. David, I don't hate you. I don't hate Jessica. But forgiving isn't the same as forgetting. And trust, once it's broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. So there's no chance for us to be a family again? We are still family, David. We just can't be together right now. And Emma and James? They will always be my grandchildren. When they are older, when they can decide for themselves who they want in their lives, I will be here. That could be years. I have time. After I hung up, Margaret poured us both a glass of wine. How do you feel? Free, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in my adult life, I am completely free. Free to do what? I smiled, thinking of all the possibilities that lay ahead. Free to travel without asking anyone's permission. Free to spend my money on things that make me happy. Free to help people who actually appreciate the help. Free to live my life exactly as I choose. And if David and Jessica change, if they truly change, then we'll see. But they'll have to prove it over time, not just with words. That night, after Margaret went to bed in one of my guest rooms, I sat on the back patio under the stars, thinking about Lionel. He had been so wise to warn me about money and families. He knew exactly what would happen. But he had also given me something more valuable than $8 million. He had given me the chance to find out who I really was when I didn't have to rely on anyone's approval. I was stronger than I ever knew. I was braver than I had ever been allowed to be. And I was finally, truly, happy. 3 weeks later, a second letter from Emma arrived. Dear Grandma Viola, Dad told me about the college money. Thank you so much. Mom cried when she heard, but I think they were happy tears. I still want to visit you someday. Maybe when I'm older, I can take a bus to your house. I love you, Emma. P.S. I'm learning how to make chocolate chip cookies for when I visit. I tucked the letter into my jewelry box, next to Lionel's wedding ring, and my mother's pearls, the things that mattered most. Someday, when Emma was old enough to understand, I would tell her the whole story. I would explain that sometimes the people you love disappoint you, but that doesn't mean you stop loving them. It just means you love yourself enough to protect your own peace. And someday, maybe years from now, there could be healing. There could be reconciliation. There could be a way for us to be a family again. But if not, that was okay too, because I had learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need anyone's permission to be happy. I was enough on my own. The sun was setting over my beautiful garden, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I poured myself a glass of wine, put on music Lionel would have loved, and danced by myself in my kitchen. I was free, I was happy, and I was right where I was meant to be. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.